Let's close that out. And good morning, everybody. It is Black Success Magazine, the podcast, and I'm your host, Sherman Ray. Welcome, everybody, to Financial Thursdays with Black Success Magazine, the podcast. For those of you, this might be your first time being a part of the show. Each and every week, we actually have a great lineup of topics that we talk about. We talk about people, trends, the news. Change up the format just a little bit, but it's always the same. It's about success. If you'd like to hear more about what we do over here at Black Success Magazine, the podcast, or on Black Success Magazine, just go to our website at www.blacksuccessmagazine.com and you can check it out, or you can email me at info@blacksuccessmagazine.com, especially on Open Mic Fridays, where we will take audience questions and everything else. Today, it's Financial Thursday, Thomas, and we're going to bring my brother, Robby Thomas, in with us right now. Come on in, Robby. Are you there, Robby?
Yes. Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, how are you doing, Mr. Thomas?
I'm just great, man. I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for asking.
Fantastic. So anything exciting new happened to you this week?
A lot of really interesting news going on, specifically with me. Some really exciting stuff. I'll share with you some of that stuff. I can't talk about right now, but certainly a lot of exciting stuff. But in terms of what we want to talk about today, I want to talk a little bit about what we witnessed with respect to the Biden-Harris administration's conversation with the small business community, and they recently had a virtual meeting with the U.S. Black Chambers, and there was some really interesting information there I want to share, and I also want to talk about something that is becoming more and more prevalent in our conversation in terms of business, and that is Tesla's purchase of $1.5 billion in Bitcoin.
Sure.
Balance sheet. Those two things.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about first? Because the Bitcoin thing, if many of you guys, if you're watching any of the financial news and stuff like that, Bitcoin has been in the news, especially lately. And like you said, what do you want to start with, Rob? You want to start with the
let's start with the Biden-Harris initiatives around small business and trying to, the American Recovery Plan. I think it was really heartening to hear that there was some intentionality around what they want to do. And so with respect to getting businesses back on track, particularly Black-owned businesses across the country. The takeaways that I got from that is that, they're concerned about.
Let me set this up real quick too. We all know that during COVID, and I think historically, Black businesses actually lagged behind all other social classes of entrepreneurs, and it was even exemplified or accentuated during COVID, where we had probably upwards of 60% of businesses decimated by COVID. So now we see a turning of the corner, the administration taking a hard look at what they can do to help Black business get back on its feet, because right now there's still like this reticence, right? Black business owners feel like going, hey, I don't know if we want to walk out the door. And so that's, just give it kind of a little bit of context. So go ahead, Robby.
Well, I think to add to what you just said is that, what they also observed is that a large percentage of Black-owned businesses could not and did not take advantage of the PPP. And so the Paycheck Protection Program really was geared towards small businesses. And I think there's a problematic the way that we've categorization of Black-owned businesses. You can't really say that, we're typical in terms of a small business is defined by the SBA. Most of the businesses in the African-American communities are single owner and either sole proprietor type businesses that don't have a lot of employees. That doesn't mean that they're not small businesses, just that we operate our businesses a little differently. That said, a lot of people don't have relationships with banks and traditional financial institutions. So the relationship wasn't there, and so folks could not take advantage of that. And so that program largely was unsuccessful, if you ask the average Black-owned business, whether or not they were reached and they were able to take advantage of that program. So they observed that that was an issue.
And let me interject something here too, Robby. And this was a real tough one because we at the Chamber and actually deal with U.S. Bank a lot. And this was probably one of the biggest sources of concern, and one of the things we're really pushing forward as hard as we can for Black business owners to engage in the process of banking and trying to create a relationship with their banker, because if a pandemic should ever happen again, and of course everybody says that could never happen again, but we didn't know this was going to happen.
Never know.
Trying to create a relationship with your banker during a pandemic is a tough thing, and trying to, change the way you're thinking about things and the way you conduct business outside of the traditional banking method it's very tough to change the paradigm and to engage in banking if you've never done it.
Well, it's twofold. I think partly is, yes, there is an issue. There's a gap between, businesses that obviously do not have the ability or may not be choosing to do business with traditional financial institutions. You have tools like PayPal, for example. Like, you can really run your business through PayPal because they offer debit card and credit lines and all that kind of stuff. And so that's not a traditional financial institution, but there's all kinds of avenues that and off ramps that businesses can utilize to conduct business. But when it comes down to tapping into federal and government programs, it's a difficult proposition. Now you have to essentially be able to show that you've got this relationship, because they can't do business directly with the small business community. The federal government has to push that money through layers of bureaucracy, unfortunately, and that's essentially just how it is. It's tax dollars that have to be accounted for, and there needs to be some administration to execute that. And so it's important, though, that we begin to look at what's the important steps to take in order to really coordinate our efforts and tap into those resources. So there has to be some intention about how that's done. So the two big pieces here is that they're going to be doing a lot of funding to CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions, and MDIs, Minority Depository Institutions. And still, you still need to have a strategic approach to getting down to the lower or the lowest common denominator. That's those individual business owners. And so how that's done is going to be really important.
Yeah. So Robby, real quick, what's the difference between a CDFI and an MD? So
minority depository institutions actually do have, they take deposits from the community, right? So it's probably a Black-owned bank or Brown-owned bank, and they actually take deposits from the community. A community development financial institution doesn't necessarily take deposits, but they do community development activity such as lending and those types of small business funding mechanisms.
So, and specific to Las Vegas, since we're in Las Vegas, so nationally, what kind of institutions are you talking about? And then really would we have a comparable sort of entities like that here in Las Vegas?
Yes, Las Vegas does have community development finance and financial institutions. And so it's really important to identify, who they are, and so that they could be tapped. And so there's a website that you can go to that identifies all the CDFIs and all the MDIs. In fact, if you go to the FDIC's website, they'll tell you too, right? The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Company. Yeah. They actually have all the listings of all financial institutions, and you can categorize by, the ones that are MDIs or CDFIs.
Okay, fantastic. So for any business owner that's out there looking for something like that,
Right.
they can go to the FDIC website. There's actually something there.
Just type in CDFIs,
Yeah,
and it'll tell you exactly where they are. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we
sure.
do have CDFIs here in Nevada,
Okay.
and specifically that will service. They're not that many, but they do exist.
Okay. All right. So there was, and so we're talking about today, for those of you who are just joining us right now, we're talking with Robby Thomas. It's Financial Thursdays with Robby Thomas. We're talking about the conference call basically that happened between the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, excuse me,
and Janet Yellen.
And Janet Yellen, and they were talking about and to U.S. Black business, or the Black chambers, talking about getting money down to Black business owners, and so we're just kind of talking about that with Robby, and we will talk about Bitcoin a little bit later, but right now let's just kind of drill this down a little bit. So
Right.
You were saying, Robby, that there are basically a couple of different entities that money gets funneled to from the federal government.
Right.
And so what else were you getting from this conversation?
Well, there's a new initiative that is going to offer grant funds. And so there's $15 billion of small business grants. And grants, of course, are monies that you don't have to repay. So what hasn't been sort of hashed out, and at least from what I've seen and heard, is the protocols or the guidance around how that's going to be administered. But there's an opportunity for the hardest hit Black-owned or African-American owned businesses that have been impacted by COVID, which a lot have been impacted. This is an opportunity to really get back on track and to secure grant funding to either expand or to retool your business, and find ways to look toward the future as far as how you're going to get your business back on track, and if it needs to pivot and to again to retool going forward, because a lot of businesses might have been impacted to the point where they can't continue to operate as they once did, and so you really have to infuse that with technical assistance and to get the kind of support you need, so that you strengthen the entire ecosystem, but really work with those business owners to strengthen up their products, their services, and whatever they provide to the community.
So, Robby, you were saying that they were talking about dollar amounts for these grants. The overall budget that they were talking about for the grants, or do they just give an overall budget number that they're saying for the entire particular initiative?
Right. I think the number was 15 billion.
Okay.
And I was looking at, according to the U.S. Black Chamber, there are roughly 2 million Black-owned businesses. Of course, a majority have been obviously disproportionately hit with COVID, and a significant amount of that majority probably won't open again, right? But that's not to say that they won't get back on the entrepreneurial trail, right? So thinking optimistically, you may have had to, close for this particular period, but entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs, and they're going to try to figure out, how to get back. And then with what we're seeing in terms of the pent-up demand, because a lot of people are not spending money, I think there's going to be ample opportunities to try to find out what would be, the best use of my entrepreneurial juices, right? And so, how do we engage that pent-up demand and be able to create a product that can be brought to the marketplace?
Oh yeah, and I think what's going to happen also is that people, their whole mind, their focus, in the kind of business that they might have gotten into or were in. They're looking at the landscape now. And like you said, entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. And they're going to figure out, what? Things have changed. And they've changed this way. There's a lot more virtual stuff. There's a lot more stuff where it doesn't require a brick and mortar building. It doesn't require as many employees. So you're going to see, I think, even as I was driving, to the studio this morning, One of the things that I was looking at was that we focus a lot of our attention in society on a certain plane of ideas, and that's really where we're at. But we live in a three-dimensional plane. So I'm thinking esoterically now, right? I'm thinking kind of abstract, but it would have never happened that way had it not been for COVID. I mean, COVID has made you think, hey, I can't think the same way. Things have got to change.
Well, COVID has done a lot of things, and it's obviously a soapbox that I would love to stand on right now. But at the end of the day, it's exposed a lot of the vulnerabilities in our economy. For example, a lot of people have been devastated by this the pandemic and the shutdowns and what have you. A lot of families are impacted. But at the end of the day, there's also opportunity. I think looking in the within the some of the things that we begin to see and to understand a little bit better. Obviously, issues like equality and disparity begin to sort of show and rear their ugly heads again. But we have a real opportunity to begin to retool and to pivot on what we used to know versus where we're going. And I think getting the kind of building the kind of coalition that we can with whether it's government programs, but more importantly, and here's the point I want to leave with respect to what I saw. We really need to change our strategy, even nationally. I think we need to change our strategy because most of the small businesses in the African American community don't really, it's not a fair assessment to say that we are a small business, because when you define it, the SBA defines a small business as employees, a company that has employees maybe up to 250 employees in one category, and then maybe up to 1,500 in another category. The point is that we really need micro business strategies, because that's really where a lot of our small business owners reside and live, right? It's in that micro business environment. So there are a lot of other countries that have very vibrant micro business strategies. And so that, I think, needs to be something that we advocate for, because I think it's more strategic and a better alignment of how we get resources down to the smaller individuals. The PPP program did not work largely for us because of that fact. You're looking at a solution that is a sledgehammer that is geared towards a nail, right? And you don't use a sledgehammer to hit a nail. You need a carpenter's hammer, right?
Yeah.
And so that mindset needs to shift a bit. The government is doing what it can, but I think the cities and counties and more localized administrative municipalities need to really create better strategies to get down to the bottom, sort of the bottom of the ecosystem in order to lift.
You said something very interesting to me, Robby, and you get my mental juices going. The beginning of this country, up until probably, 1900s or something like that, you did not have large businesses. The large businesses came as a result of everybody wanting to industrialize and bring everybody into the cities, that kind of thing. The vast majority of businesses then, as they are today, have not changed. They have always been small businesses or standard size businesses. They were mom and pops. They were, the guy who's got the restaurant or something like that. I think what has changed, though, have been the way businesses are financed and the way they're looked at or looked down upon. Like we were saying before, or like you mentioned before, that you identified there's about 2 million Black-owned businesses in America.
Yeah.
The vast majority of those are all standard size businesses. They're one man, two man operations, right?
Yeah.
I think, and I think the PPP program brought into clear focus the problem with the way the federal government and regular municipalities deal with standard sized businesses. It's they give the advantage to the guy with more than 5 guys or more than 50 guys. the advantages are not there. So I think there might be needs to be a retooling of what the federal government and local governments and municipalities do when they're looking at standard sized businesses.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some consideration and some thought put into creating better on-ramps for, smaller and more micro-sized businesses to get into the mainstream. We're talking about, pipeline, getting them into the pipeline so that they can get contracts, or really teaching those small business owners how to integrate into the larger economic picture. So there's some strategic things that I think needs to happen, because you can't keep doing the same thing. You're going to end up getting the same results. The federal commitment is clear. I was really happy to see and to feel that there's a sense of urgency around this. But I also know that the past failures, if you haven't adjusted your assumptions, then you're going to end up with similar outcomes. And so it's important to shift the strategic mindset around how you reach small businesses, and the overall mechanisms that address those disparities are addressed fundamentally. I mean, on a real granular level. So those are some of the takeaways I have, but I really am encouraged. But I think we need to shift gears a little bit as far as, how we approach and the outreach. And you always hear people complain that, we don't really reach the small businesses because whatever that is, whatever the issue is. Well, the strategic initiatives are a little bit, they're lacking a little bit more insight.
Yeah, that's going to change them. Yeah, that's going to change. I can guarantee you, because there's going to be a lot more small businesses. It's like starting over again. And we're going to turn the corner and talk a little bit on another subject here. But just to finish this out, I believe, just as a way, standard. I'm going to inject a new word: standard size businesses, normal size, as opposed to. We'll use the word micro. That's fine, but standard size businesses, your regular size businesses. People are rethinking how they're going to be structuring those businesses. But I believe there's going to be a new way for the federal government and local banks to actually deal with standard size businesses.
Yeah.
Let's turn the corner, Robby.
Let's talk about technology. Technology has really helped us to go in the direction of a one-man operation, but
and it's going to continue.
Really help, businesses just to blossom, and so we need to make that adjustment.
So let's talk about the newest thing, and it's not really new, but it's been something that has been on the map for the last couple of years, and now it's gaining momentum, and we're talking about Bitcoin. So let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin, the pros, the cons, what it is. As we don't have a lot of time, but I'd love to hit this real quick.
Well, obviously Bitcoin, to be able to explain it in the short space of time, I really wanted to tell you that, the implications of Tesla picking up or putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet is enormous, because it creates a paradigm that a lot of businesses are going to look at this and go, well, if he is such, they're doing so well, right? Tesla stock is in the 800s. Elon Musk is the wealthiest person in the U.S., maybe in the world. And so if he's smart enough to buy this, then there must be something to it. But Bitcoin, the preposition for its use case is that it's a store of value. And, when it was created as a peer-to-peer payment system. But Bitcoin has began to seep into the mainstream in a manner that people are starting to see its utility. Now, with the federal government putting all this money into the economy, it's going to be the impact of that is going to be negative on the dollar in terms of inflation, and it will decrease the value of the dollar. Now, if you're sitting on billions and billions of dollars, or even if you're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars, one of the things you want to do is to not lose wealth just by having your money sit. And so what's the best place to put this money? You look at the best utilities, best stores of value, the best and possibly, assets that will increase in value over time. Bitcoin is definitely, getting the kind of traction, and it has performed. Last year, Bitcoin, the return was 300%, right? Ethereum is another cryptocurrency that people should be aware of. But without getting into a lot more detail about it, I think we need to do our due diligence and see why all of this, why it's the rage, and why the broader media is starting. I mean, Wall Street's taking notice.
They really are. I watched a show this morning, a financial show this morning.
Right.
And the big buzz was, when will Bitcoin hit $100,000? That was and I just saw that this morning.
Yeah.
And that people are saying, they were saying, now these guys are all stock guys. So all the guys that were on the show, they were all talking about stocks.
Right.
But so they're not talking about real estate. They're not talking about anything. They were talking about stocks. So they're going, but then Bitcoin came into the conversation and they were all like going, this is a reality. There's a reality of this.
It started as this fringe, type of, mostly the geeks and the people that were really into technology and money. But it really started out of the 2008 downturn, where people lost a lot of wealth. And one of the initiatives there was to create a system that was separate from, the present monetary system, because we haven't always gotten it right. Okay. We've lost a lot of money. Things have always, we're so interconnected financially that, if you invest in this and something happens over here, you possibly could lose a lot of your wealth. And so this separate system was this unique new thing. And over time, people began to understand its utility. When I first learned about it, I was trying to understand what was going on with this new Bitcoin, because I was sitting in the bank, and bankers think they know everything, right? And so, I mean, you got Jamie Dimon, who basically called Bitcoin a fraud. Sure. Even Warren Buffett called it rat poison. That's
generally people like say that. Generally, people who do that is because they don't control it.
What it means is that this is a threat. When Jamie Dimon's bank was calling Bitcoin a fraud, they listed it as a threat in their annual report. Okay, so but now they're creating their own digital currency. So there is something to be said about where the understanding of money is. And so money is just a store of value. Sure. It's a medium of exchange. It should be a unit of account, and Bitcoin is going to achieve all of those categories in terms of how we define money, right? Sure. There may be 5 or 6 major categories of how you define money. Gold has been the store of value for 5,000 plus years. And so a lot of people are saying, well, I need it because it's tangible and it's something that has utility. But when you look at the new value system, how people are equating value, it's really about platforms. Facebook is a platform. Facebook doesn't create anything. Amazon doesn't create anything. It's true. And so we've got to understand what the new value system is and how these new networks are creating value. Sure. Bitcoin is the first money network.
Yeah. And so there you have it. And before anybody goes out and buying Bitcoin right now, we are not offering financial advice.
Not investment advisors.
We're not investment advisors. But we are saying because there's always ups and downsides and risks. So that's the financial thing you have to say. You can't say it. But when we come back next week, when you come back next Thursday, we're going to have an update on Bitcoin, especially on Bitcoin, find out really what it's all about, because I'll tell you, it is not right now. It's the hot thing. Do your own investigating on this, folks. Okay. Robby, thank you so much for being a part of the show today, brother. We will see you again next week for Financial Thursdays with Robby Thomas.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, brother.
Bye.
And once again, folks, I want to stress again that we are not financial advisors. So if you are going to go out and do any buying of anything, do your own investigating and do your due diligence. We will be back again tomorrow for Open Mic Fridays on Black Success Magazine podcast. As always, if you'd like to get on our website, go to our website at blacksuccessmagazine.com or send me an email if you have any questions that you'd like to have on air on Black Success Magazine for our Open Mic Friday. Just send them to their at info@blacksuccessmagazine.com. We will, once again, you can go to us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Apple Podcast. We will see you again tomorrow for Black Success Magazine, the podcast. I'm your host, Sherman Ray. We will see you again tomorrow, 8:30. Bye-bye.